Vanessa Johnsrud and I were going through and they didn't know who we were, and they're like, "Who are you?" And we're like, "We're arts and corrections teacher. We teach theater." And he went like this: "Theater to the inmates." And then he just walked away. It was very funny, but I was afraid to laugh because you're not supposed to laugh. So Vanessa Johnsrud and I started this program because the California Arts Council refunded a kind of seminal rehabilitative program in American prisons called Arts and Corrections. The William James Association, which is located in Santa Cruz, California, is a nonprofit founded in the 70s, named after an educational philosopher, William James, that began this work of bringing professional artists into prisons and having them teach their craft to the people who are incarcerated there. And today it's funded by the state, so we're an official program funded through the government that works in prisons. I really don't want to talk too much about the program because what I'm going to be sharing with you here today is an excerpt from a play written by a student that's in one of my classes. So he's a writer, a published writer, but he happens to be taking my theater class, just so you know that it's not, his work is not connected to what I've been doing with the inmates. This is his independent work. Oh, and also I should note, in the program there was a bit of a typo, and this play is written by John Perugan and not myself at all. So if you get your program, you can take a black Sharpie and Sharpie out my name. It's misspelled anyway, so. I just don't want to give off the impression that I had anything to do with writing this because it's quite good and I'm not that good of a writer. Let's see. I thought maybe briefly what I originally wanted to do, but we don't have enough time for it, was I wanted to get everybody to say their name and why they're here, but then that would be a whole session. So maybe we can just find some extra chairs, or if you all want to pull those chairs together so you can sit next to each other. Because I don't, unless you well, you should take this one with the cushion part.
About 30 people have piled into the room.
Please come in, please come in.
It's a welcome gathering.
So, who here in this room has ever been inside of a prison? Jail. Okay, great. Who in this room feels like they read quite a bit about what the prison industrial complex is like in America today? That they pay attention to that news. Okay, great. Super. I don't know what else I would really want to ask you all, but I think maybe it would be better to leave more time at the end to discuss the material that you'll be hearing in the play. Leslie Castellano, ladies and gentlemen, Leslie Castellano. Sorry, this is if we were all in class, I'd already be standing up and having to do things that make you feel uncomfortable. So, it's my job. I'm gonna make you feel uncomfortable. This is also what I tell my students too, because I think it's one of the best things is to make people feel uncomfortable and silly. So, Leslie, thank you, is going to help me read from this play. And let me put some information on the board. So, the author of this play, his name is John Peruganen. He's a student in my level 2 class, level 2 security class at Pelican Bay State Prison. He came into, excuse me, sorry, that was gross. Just had a burger. He didn't sign up for the class, but he came to a class to introduce himself because his play, Let's Keep Dancing. Keep. Oh, sorry. Oh, God. This is stay in my brain. Stay in my brain. Okay. Who else has had a couple of really busy weeks? Who else is really busy? Okay. That was me. Okay, I have to try really hard not to misspell his name because he only has one double letter. Peruganen, like that. Okay. So he came into the classroom to introduce himself because this play that he wrote, Let's Keep Dancing, has been picked up by the Public Theater in New York City, Joseph Papp's Theater, which is one of the most famous theaters in the entire country. So when he said that, I was like, oh, because I'm not going to get anywhere close to that theater in my lifetime. Not if I stay in Humboldt. Ooh, I better stick with this guy. Maybe he'll get me in. If I get him out. So, it's a joke. So it's been picked up by the Public Theater, and they're developing it into a podcast so that it can be streamed on the radio. So they have the rights to it. However, we are sharing it for educational purposes today. John gave me permission himself. And I think, without any further ado, we should maybe have a couple of chairs, a really awkward tall stool, and I can move this plant for a moment. Slightly less awkward short stool. Which one do you want? Slightly less awkward. Alrighty.
This guy.
Yo. Oh, great. Thank you for making notes, just in case. Acting notes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. This was very awkward.
Oh, it's getting so much less awkward too.
Yeah. Sure. Cool. Thanks. Thank you. This is horrible. So this play is, I'm going to give you a little bit of context. We're going to read about 10 pages from this play. It is written in a carceral setting. So there are two main characters in the play. Green, a younger man, maybe late 20s, early 30s, who's incarcerated, and Hap, short for Happy, who is an older man, maybe in his 50s, who's incarcerated, 40s, 50s, and they both are on death row. So these are two people who have execution dates. The play is really a conversation evolving over the course of a period of time. So we're going to read a little excerpt. In one instance, there is a third character. I will voice that third character. And I will also be reading the stage directions. And I will be reading the older character, Hap. Leslie will be reading the younger character, Green. And just so you all know, I did ask some men to help me. But I didn't allow for a long period of time for people to get back to me. So I would have preferred to have actors that actually maybe sounded like these characters might sound like. But I thought also it would be an interesting experiment, a thought experiment for all of us to be hearing these words coming out of the mouths of women. And of white women at that. So feel free to twist your brain around the way you hear things and then switching over to a different character perspective. I am not sure if the playwright specified the ethnicity of these male characters, but they're certainly male characters. So just so you know that. Any questions? No? Okay, super. We can get started then. Scene 8. Hap and Green stand in front of their cells.
I wish to God they'd given me life without parole instead of the death penalty.
Life without parole is the death penalty.
No, it's not.
In section 190.2 of the California Penal Code, under the heading death penalty, is where you will find the life without the possibility of parole sentence. It's a sentence of death by incarceration. The end thereof is always death.
Huh. I never thought of it as a death sentence.
It is that, and a death more cruel in form.
How could it be more cruel?
I'll give you an example. In the movies, gangsters and villains promise to kill you quickly in return for your cooperation. Refuse, and they swear they'll kill you slowly. Life without parole is the slow death penalty. Whereas both methods of execution meet the requirement of a death sentence, the slow death penalty is even more cruel than lethal injection.
Nothing can be more cruel than lethal injection.
What about the gas chamber or the electric chair?
Well, of course those. That's why we have lethal injection.
Because it's less inhumane, more humane.
I guess, but when you put it like that, it doesn't sound right.
Because it's not right. Humane and execution is a contradiction in terms. It's not a matter of degree. It's all death. It's all wrong. All forms of legal execution are inhumane.
Yeah, but the gas chamber and the electric chair were torture.
Now you're making my point. That's the distinction. Life without hope of parole is a mercilessly slow method of execution, and a slow death by definition is torture.
I don't think anybody looks at it like that, Hap.
Sure they do, just not here.
Where then?
Try the rest of the civilized world. The European Court of Human Rights ruled that life without parole was inhumane and outlawed the practice.
Okay, maybe Europe.
Life without parole is unconstitutional in 25 countries.
Name one outside of Europe.
Canada.
Well, that's a given. I should have guessed.
How about Mexico?
Mexico doesn't have life without parole?
They do not. Should I count off all the South American countries that have abolished life without parole?
No, spare me.
Do you realize the U.S. is the only democratic nation that still executes its prisoners and sentences people to life without parole? The only country in the world that sentences children to life without parole?
Well, some kids do horrible things.
And 20 years later, they're not the same people anymore. Nobody is after 20 years in prison. Keeping people who were convicted of violent crimes in prison until they are no longer a threat to society makes sense. Permanent incarceration, in spite of a person's ability to rehabilitate, is unreasonable, not to mention a complete waste of a taxpayer's hard-earned money.
So our country has a few more life without parole prisoners. So what?
If only. 50,000 Americans are in prison without the possibility of parole. The ACLU,
Who are they?
the American Civil Liberties Union, they reported that 3,200 out of the 50,000 are serving life without parole for nonviolent crimes, which means there are more people serving a life without parole sentence for nonviolent crime in the U.S. than the entire number of reported cases of life without parole in the entire rest of the world combined.
Maybe we're just smarter than everybody else. We can't help it if we're superior.
That's what Hitler said, and what the Nazis believed.
I'm not Hitler. This ain't Germany. I was just saying.
No, I know. I'm just saying that logic dictates proportioning belief to current available information and evidence, in addition to all the evidence based on studies and statistics and the economical, social, moral, psychological, and constitutional arguments against permanent incarceration. The epistemic argument renders the very idea of a no possibility of parole sentence recklessly ignorant.
You lost me at
Epistemic.
And I don't even care what it means.
Fair enough.
What I'm curious about is all these countries that don't have life without parole.
Okay, what about them?
Are you saying that everybody eventually gets out of prison?
Technically speaking, everybody has the possibility of being released, which is to say that at some point everybody has an opportunity to prove their rehabilitation. However, in actuality, everybody in fact does not get out of prison. Extreme cases such as psychopathic killers, serial killers, the criminally insane, they're not granted any form of release from prison. They will never get out.
But what if they do? What if they slip through the cracks?
That's part of the propaganda special interests are so easily able to peddle, but that's not the experience, the reality, in nations where rehabilitation is the common practice. Extreme cases are just that, extreme. They don't go undetected. There's no slipping through the cracks.
Fine, but let's get back to your slow death penalty versus lethal injection. That's the American reality.
Yes.
So if you had a choice, which method of execution would you really...
Firing squad.
What? Well, that's not even why.
Think about it. Unimaginable fear, the intensity, standing there waiting, anticipating the gunfire, your nerves totally on edge, synapses firing, your entire nervous system sizzling, adrenaline pumping through your body, sweat dripping from your pores when finally, like the crack of a lightning bolt, the shot rings out. In the very next instant, your heart explodes in your chest. And in that instant, right before you die, you'd feel so incredibly alive. More alive than you'd ever felt in your entire life. The total experience culminating in one massive motherfucking, please excuse my language, rush.
Wow. Right? No, I mean you. That was, I don't know what the hell that was, but it made you sound a little unbalanced.
That's all right. Little imbalance could be viewed as normal, considering our address.
And I'd still trade this address for life without parole.
Maybe.
You wouldn't? Massive motherfucking rush aside, seriously.
What I would is seriously advise we change the subject before I really get started.
Just tell the truth. You know you'd rather have life without parole than this.
I would not.
How can you say that? What if you were actually given the choice right here, right in this moment?
As sure as I'm standing here, right this moment, I'm positive I would not choose life without parole.
Why are you so sure?
Let's just say I've done a lot of time on the main line and I've known a few LWOPs.
What?
LWOP. LWOP is the acronym for life without parole. It's also used as a noun. A person serving an LWOP sentence is also referred to as an LWOP.
Prison slang.
Actually, it's prison administration shorthand. An official document, unofficial documents, you'll see inmate so-and-so is a 59-year-old LWOP, like that.
Something new every day. So you've known a lot of LWOPs.
I have. One time, I was in this insight gardening class.
You mean like in prison?
Yeah, yes. It was a very unique program that offered an interior and exterior cultivation of self through gardening. Our teacher brought in some impatiens and dissected them, separated the parts, to give us a visual aid while he explained the stages of growth, which served as an analogy to our personal inner growth. He removed the petals, sliced the stems, and I noticed Satchel, this old LWOP I know, sitting in the back by himself, just sitting there, fingering a flower petal, a stream of silent tears wetting his cheeks. I went back and asked if he was all right, and he said, in the voice of Satchel, "Oh, I'm okay, Hap. They're just so damn pretty. I ain't touched a real-life flower in 40 years.
And
Hold on, I need to get a drink of water.
me too, but I want to hear about Satchel.
You will. Stage directions. Running water, a toilet flushes in a cell down the tier. We can hear Hap splashing water on his face. Green steps to the front of his cell. Hap steps up. Satchel died, lung cancer. When the doc gave him 6 months to live, he put in for a compassionate release so he could be with his daughter. He was told it was granted, and he believed it. Poor fool let himself get his hopes up. Everybody knows they never grant compassionate leaves for LWOPs. He died alone in the infirmary. One of the guys that worked there said in the end, Satchel was delirious with pain, rocking back and forth, looking all around, mumbling unintelligibly like he was hallucinating, and he was shitting all over himself. I can't go out like that. I can't.
They should have let him die at home.
Man served more than 4 decades for killing a man in a drunken fist fight when he was 19. Before he died, he had to fight just to get himself and other LWOPs approved for that stupid gardening class.
It wasn't stupid.
No, it wasn't. I've just gotten myself in another mood. Satchel was the one who filed the paperwork against the administration, pointing out they'd mistakenly categorized the gardening class as a vocational program. The voc classes are reserved for prisoners who still have a chance to get out. The reasoning is that LWOPs don't need to learn a vocation just to die in prison. Another reminder that you exist somewhere between life and death, where there's no hope of a life, only death. Therein lies the reality of death without parole. When you go in for dental treatment, they have you fill out a form for your name, CDC number, California Department of Corrections, and this one question: when is your release date? If you're getting out relatively soon, they might withhold treatment and give you antibiotics in place of a costly procedure. If you're going to be in prison for a while, they fix the tooth. Can't have you running around screaming in pain like a raving lunatic. LWOPs, they just pull out the tooth. Another reminder your human value is less than. There have been lawsuits and now there's a federal overseer, but that release date question is still right there on the form.
So they can separate the living from the living dead.
Now you're getting it.
I thought we were supposed to be the undisputed world champion of human rights.
We like to believe that, especially Californians. But as liberal as this state claims to be, we sure seem to have a penchant for the practice of legal death methods, fast and slow.
It's barbaric.
Business is ruthless. As long as the public supports death, the business of incarceration will continue to thrive.
Okay, now you lost me again.
Incarceration is a business, not unlike a pharmaceutical company selling you drugs you don't need and spending millions on lobbyists to manipulate legislation and laws to maximize profits.
Lobbyists?
The Guards Union in California raises $23 million a year and spends about $8 million on lobbyists.
Isn't that a conflict of interest?
You'd think, but we're way past that. It's an epidemic that swept the nation. Our country has the highest rate of incarceration on the planet, surpassing even the most repressive regimes like Russia and China and even Iran.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I kid you not. Check out this little factoid. The US represents only 5% of the world's population, yet houses 25% of the world's prisoners.
No, that can't be right.
I agree, but the math is correct. So, either Americans are the most unrehabilitable human beings on the planet, or else something is seriously wrong with our criminal justice system.
Something ain't right is happening.
Oh, you just gave me a Buffalo Springfield flashback.
Buffalo, New York?
No, Buffalo Springfield, the 60s rock band.
Never heard of them.
Oh, they have the song. And everybody sing with me. Something's happening here. What it is ain't exactly clear. But there's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. It's time we stop, children, what's that sound? Everybody look what's going down.
Now look what you've done.
Wisdom in song. The voters don't have a clue about what's really happening here. The primary objective of Prop 66.
Prop 66?
Yes, the initiative that made the 5-year limit for death penalty appeals. All they were really trying to do with the bill was ensure the death penalty didn't die. They couldn't have cared less about a backlogged death row. The promotion of these quickie executions was merely a marketing stratagem. That it would actually hold up in court was something they didn't expect. Lethal injection in this state, like with many states, is a tactical diversion. A poison needle leaves the impression that life without parole is a humane alternative, which it is not. And the life without parole sentence is what literally sustains the entire mass incarceration system.
How's that?
The very existence of a no parole sentence supports the false notion that genuine rehabilitation is a myth, a dubious concept at best. And that's exactly what special interests need for people to believe. Rehabilitation is to the prison industry what hydro-powered cars are to the oil companies.
Why don't they just do away with lethal injection and give all convicted murderers life without parole?
Because without lethal injection, people would take a closer look at the LWOP sentence. It's all about perception. If people only knew the truth, LWOP would be abolished, and rehabilitation would replace mass incarceration.
What do you mean the truth about LWOP?
The general public honestly believes the life without parole sentence is reserved for crime far worse than a crime that receives a life with parole sentence.
That's how it works. The time fits the crime.
Like in your case?
Well, no, I got screwed.
Because you had no intention to kill, no premeditation?
Yeah, I wasn't trying to kill anyone. They got me with a felony murder rule.
You and tens of thousands of LWOPs. Under the felony murder rule, a prosecutor doesn't even have to prove murder to get a murder conviction. To receive a life without parole sentence, you don't even have to kill anyone, intentionally or otherwise. All the while, premeditated murder, the ultimate criminal act, carries a 25 to life sentence.
The felony murder rule should be abolished.
That's what England decided in 1957. They acknowledged the error of the doctrine they created and corrected it. What's more?
No, please, Hap. No more. This shit's depressing as fuck.
I warned you not to get me started.
I should have listened. How do you know all that crap, anyway?
research for a bunch of articles I wrote that no one wanted to publish.
Well, that sucks. But it really is your unfun side, isn't it?
Does anybody know the song by a 60s band called 10 Years After? I'd Love to Change the World. Does anybody know?
I'd love to change the world. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, so that is what is written into the script here. Hap sings this song. So that's the end of the section that we're reading for you today.